Oh, hello, this is another plein air painting adventure in oils this time. It was a lovely June evening and we decided to go down to Rinsey Cove, just below Real Prosper tin mine. And it just so happened there was a nice quite a big surf that evening, it was a Sunday evening, and there was a few surfers started to appear and enjoy the surf. So we found a nice quiet spot at low tide, but they hadn't gone out very far, and I started to set up and do some oil painting. Once I eventually got the French easel set up, I decided to paint the view looking over towards Land's End. The light was very flat. It was nice and calm, no wind for a change down there, very sheltered spot, and it was lovely to hear the surf coming in. I'm just laying out the palette, usual colours, that's a cadmium orange and a magenta I've just laid out there, it's a cobalt blue, there's a lemon yellow, and a selection of brushes which I use, probably 2 or 3 for the painting, just a small 10x8 plywood panel. Dippers on the side of the palette.
Top of that one there.
Cadmium Red. Some Naples Yellow for a change. There you can see some surfers in the water enjoying that surf, just waiting for that one big wave. And Basil was having great fun there. Plenty of space for him to run around and have a good time quite safely. Bit of terps into the dipper, and clamp on the palette.
I'll make a start. I think it's have to be a quick one, isn't it? We've come down to Rinsey Cove on the beach today, quite a hike down on some slippy rocks, but we decided we'd come and do a bit of painting looking over towards the headland over there, Cudden Point over that way, and it's going to be a quick one because I think we're not sure about the tide. It is low tide, but it's not out very far. So better get started. See you later. Let's decide what we'll do. Something like that, nice and high, I think. There.
So I'm just mapping out some rough shapes in a burnt umber and ultramarine mix. It could be any colour you want really. It's just something dark so I could see what I was doing. I'm just mapping out the shapes quite roughly. This is just a guide. So I know roughly where the cliff edge and the rocks are in the foreground. Get them roughly right, I don't need them to be exactly as they are, it's just I wanted to get them roughly in the right place because that was the scene I chose and I quite liked it for that. So quite a few zigzags taking us back into the picture.
I wouldn't bother filming this bit, it's not looking too good. That's looking poor.
It was a very flat light, so it was quite tricky conditions, no contrast at all. Yes, it was quite grey and dull, but it was just nice to be there.
Did you get that in? Nice shot that, did you get that in? Good shot. Try another one.
Just talked to my daughter, winding her up there. She's behind the camera. And yeah, they got some terps with that paint there. just to get something stained onto the canvas or the board. Then I start to apply the paint quite a bit thicker then. And just roughly brush it on. I'm using a white surface for this one, no particular reason, it's just what I grabbed before I came out. And I quite like these little plywood panels, very handy to carry around, nice little size. I find them a bit too small, to be honest. You can't get the free flowing brush marks right across the board. I could really do it taking something a bit bigger out now, I think. These are great for small studies, in oils, just quick little sort of hour long things. Yeah, I really need to start taking some bigger pieces out now. I like the plywood surface, nice and smooth.
This is a nice mix, this lemon yellow and this ivory black. It makes for a good sort of good seaweedy colour. So we put that on in here. I really quite like that.
There's an overall view. Now the easel setup, French easel, Jullian box easel. Quite heavy to carry around, but it contains all my paints, brushes and everything goes in there. So I don't need to carry another box or anything, or bag. And it's very sturdy setup, especially in windy conditions. I really like it. It was a good buy off eBay, that one. Very pleased with that. You can see there I used several different grips holding the brush, depending on what sort of marks I want to apply. There's another brush that's a round. The previous one was a sort of wide filbert. That's a round brush, long handle round. It just depends what sort of marks you're making as to what brush is required. Just trying to, such a difficult scene that one was, really difficult. Colour changes in the rocks and sand were so subtle. Tones are all very similar. I'm just trying to work out what to do with that, really. You can just mix up lots of greys with a few darks in there just to help me. The lightest areas were the surf there and the sky. It's probably a painting I could have got that luminosity in the surf more.
Not looking too good
in the studio.
They never do. Yeah, try and cut into there a bit. It's quite difficult. Yeah, it's difficult. So that water there is really now coming across here, hasn't it? You don't think I would not see something like that, do you? I'm a professional con artist. Right, let's bring that down a little bit. There's another rock there, I didn't see that earlier, that's just appeared, like they do in here. Squeezing out some more colour in a minute. Look at that beauty! Wow. No wonder all the surfers are turning up. What a spot. And we want that, we'll run out of that. So. Right, now. That's nice. You see, it's changed. That colour's changed, isn't it? At the back there. Just in here. It's sort of become almost orangey, hasn't it? Not quite that orange. But let's chuck some of that in there and see what we can do with that. That's better. It's like a, yeah, there's a strip there at the back. Let's just get that in there a bit. Some lights here.
And there's a view. Very flat light, but with the tide things were changing. Obviously the waves are moving all the time, so quite a bit to contend with. And lack of contrast was probably my biggest problem, or my biggest challenge, let's say. So I mean quite a bit of fiddling.
Colour in the sky, are we? Right, let's get that. That's not right. I haven't got that right, have I? That shape of that rock there. Actually, comes down. See, I've got to get that. Work out what to do with this. Get some darker areas of these waves in here.
And that dog barking in the background, it wasn't Basil, it was the surfers had turned up and brought a dog with them and just left it on the beach unattended. So of course he was it's a golden retriever, just sat there barking, looking for its owner in the water. The dog was fine, he was happy enough. Quite safe, but yeah, I thought it was a bit odd that bringing your dog and just leaving him there. So just trying to build up those waves. Obviously the paint's getting really thick at this point, so you're painting. Wetting to onto pretty thick paint, and I quite like that. That's what I like about oils, is the thickness and juiciness of the paint, rather than painting too thin. Paint really thin, I would probably use casein or acrylic.
To make that stand out more. That's better. I think we might be getting somewhere now.
So one thing I've noticed with sort of beginners to oils, they're because they come from a watercolour and acrylic, where you're painting fairly thin. They don't like the thick paint.
It is notoriously difficult painting waves like this from life. Let's try and mix up a dirty colour. It's quite dark. A minute, let's just see what that looks like on there. Get some contrast into these bits now. It's a nice shape there.
And that's the rigger brush, which I use for small areas of mark making details. And you can still load that brush up quite thick. Plenty of paint, and twist it and flick it around. I quite like that. A really nice versatile brush to have in your little brush pack. Basil, where you been? Pottering around. We're starting to build up something which is something similar to what I was after. Obviously things change as you're painting. Expectations change. Obviously the scene is always constantly changing. You're battling with lots of things, the elements, flies, other people around. But yeah, it's really good. Your eye's acting like a telephoto lens as well, so it's condensing the distance, which is a really good way of painting rather than from a photograph, because the camera tends to push all that distance right back, unless you've got a telephoto lens, of course.
Distance, yeah.
And this is the time to sort of slow down.
There's not much dark up there, this is the thing. Blue, hazy blue up there.
And that's one thing I love about the board. You see the smooth board, you can see all these brush marks really easily.
There's a darkish area there.
And canvas, you tend to sort of have to work a lot harder to scrub in to the weave of the canvas, and then the brush marks start to appear a bit later. Notice how I'm just constantly going around the painting. I'm not working on one small area at a time, just constantly going around, looking for areas of similar colour and tone. I'm just working on the thing as a whole, rather than separating it into sections. That's how I tend to do all my painting. Yeah, I'm just trying to get some of that bright seaweed colour.
We don't need too much of this.
Just to give it a bit of life in the foreground. And that yellowy green goes really nice, plays nicely against that violet and grey in the rock.
I like it. Let's knock that into there now.
Palette knife comes out again, usually to correct mistakes. Just take off some of that surface of paint so I can actually paint back over again. And now I'm actually applying some of the colour from the sky into the foreground.
Just go back up into here.
You can see where I've just scraped that off. I can now apply the paint back on again.
Now yeah, the water is actually
A lot easier.
quite a bit darker now at the horizon. You see that?
Oh yeah.
Now the water's changed, the sea's changed at the back, so I'm just putting that in now. Responding to the scene as we go. I'm trying to get some of that green into the wave there. Quite tricky on top of that very thick wet paint. If you're careful, you can just sit that on the top of that wet paint, and in other areas you can mix the colours together on the board itself.
Let's get the sand, needs to be a bit more orange yellow, I think. Just in a few areas.
And that was to help bring the foreground forward. And I think it definitely helped in the end. Warmed up some areas of the sand. I didn't want to lose that sort of silvery grey that it got where the water had been on it.
That's changed as well now, that's changing all the time. I think
you're not careful, you can just keep on fiddling forever. This is the thing, you've just got to keep working into it, and eventually think that's it, that's enough. Can't take it any further. That's the biggest problem I think we have, is knowing when to stop.
See if this helps. It's a bit darker here. A richer colour.
Yeah, I needed to get that area, one area of the cliff at the top there, and top right, to recede, so I started to just put something a bit warmer on in front of it and leave it like a violety grey behind, and definitely worked.
My hair brushes are all falling apart. Look, wait a second.
I think I need some new brushes. Start to disintegrate some of them. Just decided to darken some edges of those rocks and introduce something a bit warmer into the foreground there. That definitely brought that forward as well. It definitely helped. So yeah, I'd like to flip the rigger around, so it's quite, the marks become more random. Just trying to catch an idea of that large wave breaking. Not quite sure if I got it right. Certainly I got the idea of it, where I wanted it to be. It's starting to shape up a bit more now.
Let's try and get some nice thick lumps on this water in the foreground here.
That's what I really like it, the oil paint. Nothing else like it, really good fun like this. That's sitting up on top of the already wet paint. With a brush rather than with a palette knife.
It comes in there. We've got some
You see the board's hooked on there, gripped on with those little hooks.
yeah, this one definitely needs to be left to dry, I think.
It's getting to a stage now where I was thinking maybe to leave it and let it dry in the studio for a week or two, because there's quite a lot of white paint mixed in with that area in the water. It takes longer to dry. So I was thinking maybe leaving it at this stage.
And where that rock is, I can't even see that out there. Seems to have put that in and it's not there. That doesn't help, does it?
Yeah, just fiddling with some of these edges, these rocks, just to sharpen some up in the foreground, just to help define them a bit more. Before I called it a day, because the paint became just very wet and unworkable.
Right, I think we'll call that a day. It's the best I can do. Couldn't quite get the brightness in the water, especially the surface, so I think I'm going to try that in the studio when it's dry. That's all from me, I've had enough now. Bye.
Now you got the job of packing up. I tend to scrape the palette off, wipe on the rag, wipe my brushes on the rag, and just pack them away on the one side, the ones I've used, so I know which ones I need to clean when I get back home. And they all just fit inside the easel there, the tray, and then that and slots in underneath the paints. It's a really good setup for carrying around. And I usually tip the turbs back into a bottle I've got for the used turbs. That's what I use for cleaning my brushes. And that's what we ended up with. And not too bad in the end, actually. What came out a lot better than I expected. And thanks for watching, and please like, and if you want to see some more and help the channel grow, please subscribe. I'd be very grateful. Thank you very much. And as ever, bye for now.
Look at that. How did that happen? Oh my god, it's getting worse. Oh. Oh my god, look at the state of me. I'm on Ink Masters now. I can go on Ink Masters. You see how hard, how tough they are. See, now I can qualify for Ink Masters.